Okay, I'm going to start sewing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to throw some hand basting into the fell to lock the lines into place. It's the best way I've found to make sure that everything's aligned properly. Still not quite there. Looks a little wavy to me sometimes, but most people can't tell. And it's usually less than a thread. The thread or less that they're off. And as long as it's a thread or less, most people aren't going to be able to tell the difference. So what I use to hand baste things in is a basting needle, a little bit on the bigger side. This one is a blunt because I don't want to cut, in my basting, I don't want to cut any of these threads. Don't want to do as little damage as I can to the fabric. I sew with a thimble and a pair of snips on my hands. If you take any classes, look at any of the tailoring videos, they all have thimbles on their hands. They're going to show you how to sew with a thimble. And so the way that I figured out that a tailor will use a thimble is that they will hold the needle like that, place the back of the needle on the thimble on the front of their finger, basically where the quick of your nail is. So basically as if it would be hitting your fingernail and going into the quick, or just about almost into between your nail and the side flesh of your finger. And that is what tailors do. I listen a lot to what tailors have to say about how to sew things because I'm making men's clothing basically by hand and basically bespoke, although not quite to bespoke. Basically, I'm making bespoke clothing, although not quite to bespoke quality or standards at this point. But if I'm going to learn how to make men's clothing, that means I'm learning how to be a tailor. Therefore, I'm going to learn from the best, which is much information as I can get on Seville tailoring. Will I ever achieve that? Probably not. But it gives me something to aim for. So next. Okay, so the first thing, thread a needle, just white basting thread. I don't know, probably less than about 4. Yeah. About a little over 3 feet doubled over. Pulling a little extra out at the end because that's what I'm going to start with. I'll do a more in-depth sewing thing once I have my tripod and everything sorted out. So let's see. Okay. So hopefully you all can see what I'm doing. I may have to wait for sewing stuff until I have my tripod all figured out. But right here, this is where my pocket's going to start. It's about 3 inches, 3.5 approximately, down from the Okay, no, this is where, this is the level where the apron is going to attach, right about here, I'd say. I have to redo figure, that is, my marks have been thing. But that makes this where my pocket's going to start. And so I need those lines to absolutely line up. So when I baste, I always make a back stitch perpendicular, or maybe at a 45 to the direction of pull. And what that does is that locks it in without me having to do 3 and 4 stitches. And so all I'm going to do is make a back stitch, and then another back stitch, making sure to only catch the layers of wool fabric that I want in there. Now this one's going to be a double back stitch because that will lock this little bit in. Then I'm going to come up here to, I think, right there. Oh, that's much better. Okay, so where there's a little line, throw back stitch, back stitch, and come up here to this. No, that one's got a lock on it. This one not so much. So I'm going to throw a little back stitch. And basically what this is doing is this is tacking it, and it's tacking it in a way that supports, holds that point, the little point of the arrow there, against being pulled up or down. And that way it won't go anywhere. And this is just a lock stitch. Okay. Now, this is an actual fell. This is the actual fell area. So this is a pocket seam, which means it's only going to get sewn down to about here. That's it. 3.5 inches. This should be 2.5 inches. That'll be 3.5 inches. And everything down, the actual pocket opening will be 6.5 inches. And the pocket itself will go 14 inches down from here, which I'll show you later. Okay, so this is where the strap hole is going to go. And so I'm going to lock, see these things, they're fairly in line there pretty well with the machine basting, but I want to make sure. So the bottom of this stripe is where the end is the bottom of my fell. I try and pick a line for the bottom of my fell because it just seems to make things that much a little bit easier. So throw my starting back stitch here. And I'm only going through one layer, I hope, because that's going so that when I open this up and I sew down this fell line, I don't have to worry about cutting that as I do it. Just kind of a tack stitch there. And then another one of my diagonal tackings. And yeah, I'm a little bit paranoid about it, but I want to be absolutely sure that this is not going to wander around on me, because I'm going to sew the fell on the inside, which means that I am not going to be able to see where these lines are going. So yeah, it's pretty much just running a few lines of running back stitches. And I'm going to pick right there, which is the bottom of my buttonhole. Now what's going to happen at the bottom of my buttonhole, well, actually I've decided, is I'm going to sew straight through where my buttonhole is supposed to be when I sew down the fell. And then after I sew the buttonhole and do the bar tacking on it, then I will cut open the fell seam right